Thank you for joining another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today has been a part of professional wrestling since the early 1960s. He has directed, produced, promoted, and refereed many pro wrestling programs for the AWA and the WWF. He was inducted into the Minnesota Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Al DeRusha. Al, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on Bumps and Thumps.
Hey, thank you, Brian, for that very kind introduction. Yeah, it's always fun to talk about wrestling. It's been quite a roller coaster career for me. And I enjoyed every moment of being in wrestling. It's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
As you probably know, I have looked at some of your past interviews and with Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzell, Ken Patera, and I see you talked with the Butcher, Vishon.
Yes.
Yeah, you had some real great interviews, and I feel honored to be a part of it.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to have you on. I appreciate you coming on here for us today. It's an honor for me. So, I've admired you since I was a little guy. I'd see you on TV, either refereeing or talking about a show coming up in the Twin Cities, or things like that. So it's my pleasure to have you on. So thank you.
Good, thanks.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your childhood, growing up in Minnesota, family life, schoolings. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
Sure. I was born November 8th, 1935. Don't tell anybody my age. I'm from a family of 11 children. I'm the 11th of 11.
Okay.
And I grew up in St. Paul in an area called the West Side Flats, which is along the Mississippi River. During 1943 and 44, during the war, a carnival came into the park and set up, during the war, you couldn't get gas or fuel or tires, and the carnivals had to find a place to set up. So carnival called the Bassinet Shows moved into the Harriet Island, and I lived, just 2 blocks from there. And in 1943, myself and my brother and a couple of my sisters went over and we got a job at the carnival, selling tickets and doing whatever. And my first job was to pick up the balls in the ball game. And I started out working in game concessions. And I actually was there in 45 when the river flooded out. An unheard of flood that year. It just flooded from one bank of St. Paul all the way across the Harriet Island. And of course, our house was flooded out along with all the other houses. And in 1945, we got flooded out at the Harriet Island, and the folks that I worked for came to my parents and asked if I could go out on the road and travel with them. And with 11 kids, they welcomed the suggestion. They knew the people I worked for. And anyway, I went out on the road in 1945 and until 1953. We traveled 5-state area Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, the Dakotas. And in 1953, I was a senior in high school at Humboldt High School in St. Paul.
Okay.
And I was on a what they called a senior work program, where you go to school in the morning and get out around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and go on a various job. It was like on the job training. I worked at the St. Paul Plastic Company, a sheet metal company, a Fisher Nut Company. Oh, I don't know, all different. You would work a month, maybe 2 months, and then you'd go back down on the list, and the students, you were on a kind of a list, and when a job would come up, the teacher would say, I got this job, that job, and we had about 15, 20 students in the program. And in 1953, as it were, the job opportunity came up at the television station. Now, that was back in 1953, and the TV station was looking for someone to work as a mail boy, work in the office, drive the station wagon, pick up props, go to advertising agencies and clients and pick up props and what have you. And the student ahead of me, it was his chance for the job, and it required a driver's license, of course.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a driver's license. So I was blessed, thank the good Lord, I had a driver's license. So the teacher said, Al, go over to the television station located in the Ham building in St. Paul. And I got the job, and the rest is history. I was a mail boy, prop guy, and on the weekends I started working in the studio, setting up sets and props, and I learned how to do lighting and what have you. And eventually I was promoted into TV producer, director, and I was doing a lot of the sports, Minnesota State High School, basketball, hockey tournaments, Little League, baseball, and Minnesota Twins baseball. So I was pretty much a sports director. And in 1961, wrestling moved from one station in Minneapolis, Channel 9, and came to Channel 11, WTCN TV. So the production manager said, Al, we're going to have All-Star Wrestling on our station. Would you like to direct it? And I said, yeah. It's on Saturdays, and you get some extra pay. Well, at that point, being a young father with 4 children, and I didn't want to pass up the opportunity for the extra money. So I actually started producing and directing 1961.
Wow. That's amazing. So my understanding is you worked at TV station, so you didn't go to college for any of that. Your work ethic and your ability to work got you.
So it was tough enough for me actually with the money situation when I was, growing up and
Yeah.
going to school. As I said, I traveled on the carnival all summer. In the winter time, I worked 6 days a week setting up pins in a bowling alley, which was a really tough job from 6 to 11 o'clock every night. And
Oh, wow.
so I
Oh,
college in St. Paul and did a few night classes, but I just didn't with the TV and everything else.
Yeah.
I just couldn't, So I was blessed at what I was doing. Back to where the conversation when I grew up, it was pretty tough. We had 11 kids. We lived in what they called a cold water flat. We had running cold water and a stool and no shower, nothing like that. We had a potbelly stove in the living room and a cook stove, wood stove in the kitchen for cooking.
Right.
And no furnace, no heat, no,
Yeah.
it was tough. It was tough growing up.
Yeah.
But everybody in our neighborhood was in the same predicament, if you will, or the growing up. Nobody had any money. Everybody worked hard. It was a good ethnic neighborhood, and everybody got along well. It was a great place to grow up. So our family, learned work ethics. If you wanted, if you needed and wanted some spending money, you went out and worked and did, junking and picking up, pop bottles and selling them for 2 cents.
Yeah.
You did whatever it took. And so anyway, it was, that's how I kind of got into the carnival, as I told you, and into wrestling.
Yeah. So you got into wrestling, it sounded like in 1961, when basically the AWA was been around for about a year, I believe, at that time. What was it like working with those guys, like Vern and Wally Karbo, and because you did both the directing and producing, and then you got more involved, from what I've seen, anyways, with the wrestling business itself. Can you kind of talk about how you got into it?
Oh yeah, well, in 1961, as I said, the wrestling came in to the Channel 11, and I started producing and directing. And in 1973, I left the TV station after 20 years and went full time with the AWA.
Oh, okay.
I was in television sales, selling TV time, but they allowed me to produce and direct the wrestling on the weekends.
Yeah.
So from 61 to 73, I produced and directed, all the wrestling. We were the AWA. We were in probably 16 to 18 major markets. We were in Denver, Phoenix, San Francisco, Winnipeg, Montreal, Chicago, Milwaukee, Rockford, Illinois, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Sioux City, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, goes on and on. When we were doing, in the early days, actually black and white television, producing and directing and doing the wrestling at the TV studio. And at Calhoun Beach Hotel, we would have a lot, maybe 100, 150 people would apply for tickets to come to the TV studio and be a part of the taping. And when videotape came on the scene, we were able to videotape the wrestling. And, Vern Gagne was a genius, if you will, when it comes to expanding the AWA into the television markets that I just mentioned. Vern knew the value of television. You couldn't, really put wrestling over with radio and newspaper when you went on the air and television, as you know, with the excitement and whatever. The AWA in its heyday was, without a doubt, the most successful wrestling promotion, along with the WWF in New York. And of course, there was the NWA and Georgia Championship Wrestling, Florida Championship. And so there were, as you know, and some of your listeners know, that there were a lot of wrestling promotions throughout the country and up into Winnipeg. So, when I left the station and went to work for full time with Vern and Wally, I stayed there with them until 1990. And of course, traveled to all of the markets that we mentioned, all the major promotions all across the country and up into Canada. And I refereed. They called me the AWA troubleshooting referee. I would come in for special events, special main events, cage matches, battle royals, whatever. And did a tremendous amount of refereeing in that 20 years. I guess I wouldn't even, probably a couple of hundred matches or more. And I did the ring announcing way back first in the 60s. The announcer was Marty O'Neill, and Roger Kent did the play-by-play.
Right.
And when Marty O'Neill passed away, I started to do the ring announcing. And interesting, one thing, when I was in sales at Channel 11, selling television time, Mean Gene Okerlund was also a TV salesman along with me. And that's how I met Gene Okerlund. I think it was sometime in the early 70s. The TV station, the engineers, the broadcast announcers like Roger Kent, Marty O'Neill, couldn't cross the picket line, and they were union members. And so Vern came to me and said, "Gee, we gotta get somebody to fill in while the station's on strike." And I said, I got the guy, Gene Oaken. He's a salesman with me. He's spent 5 or 6 years as a rock jock on the rock and roll station, KDWB. And
Okay.
he was, and he also, when he was a teenager, had a band. He played the piano and the guitar, and it really, Mean Gene, it was unbelievable. So Vern said, "Well, does he know anything about wrestling?" I said, "Well, we'll teach him." So Gene had a cabin on a lake up here in Minnesota, and we went up on a couple of weekends. I went up there with him, and we kind of did mock-up interviews and, plugging where to get your tickets and how to do the interviews, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And it worked out, with Gene was not real tall, and like Roger Kent did some of the interviews, but he was so big he overpowered the wrestlers. But Oaks, worked out well, and I'm sure everybody knows the history of Mean Gene. We kind of our kids grew up together, and we were really close friends. And of course, we all went, I think, in 84, 85, when the AWA was struggling with Vince McMahon and the WWE. A lot of us went to New York, Bockwinkel and Heenan, and Jesse Ventura, Mad Dog Deshawn. We all, Hulk Hogan, we all went, my son Gary, who produced and directed all the TV for Vince. And so we all went to New York together, and that's a whole nother story. That was an unbelievable experience.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about when you guys, a lot of you left, when you went from the AWA to the WWF, did Vern kind of take it personal, or did he understand, okay, it's business, I can't pay you what he pays you, or was there some little bit of tension there for a while? If you don't mind answering that.
Oh no. A lot of the guys left Vern for various reasons. When I left Vern, I gave them a 3-week notice, and because we were in the middle of doing videos and promoting towns and whatever, I didn't want to leave them high and dry. I gave him a notice, and it was an opportunity for me, and actually more money. Some of the guys left because of having problems with Vern. Vern was, God love him, he's unbelievable athlete and a great promoter, and but he was a little hard to get along with, and the AWA was kind of going downhill a little bit, and like Hulk Hogan, Vern didn't use a lot of the talent the way Vince Jr. knew how to handle the guys and knew what their forte was and what they could do. And like Jesse Ventura, when he went to New York, became the commentator and did a lot of the interviews, along with like Bobby Heenan. And where here in the AWA was a little different format. And so he took it pretty hard with some of the main talent, like I just mentioned, that went to New York. And then Vern tried to compete with Vince and put on a lot of, Wrestle Rocks and Wrestle Rock shows, country western promotions, and tried to get the wrestling involved. And it just, he spent a lot of money, in competition with WWE, but at the end he just didn't have enough financial backing to keep going.
Yeah. It was too bad because, when I was a kid, I really enjoyed the AWA, even though there was talent coming in, but it seemed like they were there for a while and then they go to New York, and it was too bad because I think if it would have been a little bit different, I think the AWA could have competed. I've heard stories, and Wally Karbo, I've heard, is just a true gentleman. He tried to keep everything under wraps, as far as, because you said Vern was tough to work for, but I heard Wally was just great. And what was Wally Karbo like with you?
If Vern didn't have Wally to buffer between he and the wrestlers, there wasn't a wrestler that came into the territory that didn't love Wally.
Yeah.
Uncle Wally. He would take care of the boys.
Yeah.
And they could go to Wally. And Wally was a genius when it came to, putting together matches. And he earned the respect of every wrestler in the years that I wrestled, that I was involved in wrestling. I couldn't tell you one wrestler who didn't love Wally Karbo, trusted him 100%. What Wally said was good enough for them. And Wally would kind of patch things up with the boys and try to take care of them. And Vern would not have lasted as long as he did without Wally. There's no doubt about that. When Vern wrestled in 1948 in the Olympics, and he wrestled in Chicago for Fred Kohler, I think at the time was the promoter. In the on the Dumont Network in Chicago, and the AWA in Minneapolis was owned by a guy named Tony Stecker, and Wally worked for Tony Stecker back in the late 40s and 50s. Wally was a promoter for Stecker, and so Wally was around, wrestling and whatever. And when Vern came in, I think in 50 or 51, and bought Tony Stecker out and took over the AWA, of course, Wally stayed with him.
Probably a good thing, huh?
Yeah, Wally was a fun guy. We used to have a lot of fun with them. We call them Wallyisms. You know, Wally, he was, you know, you tell stories and it sounds like we're putting them down, but the respect for Wally in the business was, you know, unbelievable. But we were doing an interview, a live interview, all the TV we did in Minneapolis, of course, was all live. And when Ivan Putski came into the territory, they built him up as, you know, from Krakow, Poland, and speaks very little English. And Marty O'Neill was doing the interview, and he said, but wrestling fans, don't worry about it. We've got Wally Karbo. Of course, Wally was Polish. And he said, Wally, come on in. And he said, we're going to ask Ivan a few questions. He said, let's start out with Ivan, how much do you weigh? And Wally looks at Ivan and says, how much are you weigh? And Marty cracked up. I mean, he started laughing. How much do you weigh? Instead of in Polish, broken English. You know? And then for Bobby Heenan, one time he was barred from the building, and Wally said, he better not show up his face at the arena. He would come out with some. And then one time he said, he's not authorized to be here. And we had fun with him.
Yeah.
He was a good guy.
Yeah.
And Nick Bachlenko did his eulogy. Of course, we were all at his funeral, which was unbelievable. The people that showed up with the fans and promoters from all around the country came in, and of course the fans. And it was really unbelievable.
Yeah,
he was a great guy. You know, just really good.
Yes, sounds like a wonderful man.
He was great. And fun to be with. He was a great fisherman. He owned a cabin in a lake. And Wally was, you know, instead of going out and buying worms or whatever, he had a garden in the back of his cabin, and then we're going to go fishing, and he'd go and dig up his worms and put them in the coffee can, and just a really simple guy, you know.
That's great.
So, yeah. But, you know, we had when you mentioned the wrestlers who would come into a territory, you know, that was the way it all worked. Talent would come into a territory, like, say, the Midnight Rockers, Marty Jannetty, and Shawn Michaels would come in, and you know, the wrestlers would come in, Jesse Ventura, Adrian, Adonis, and they'd be in the territory for maybe 2.5, 3 years, and then they would go to another territory, and then you'd build up another wrestler coming into the territory from New York or from Fritz Von Erich or Texas Bob Geigel or Florida, Donnie Owens out on the West Coast. You would exchange talents, you know, because after a while, after they worked all the angles and went through all the territory, they would bring in, you know, new, fresh talent.
Yeah.
Way back when it was the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling federation, we worked very close. Vern worked very close with Vince McMahon Sr.
Mm-hmm.
and it brought in a lot of talent from New York. I was in New York when Vince Sr. passed away. In fact, we had a thing at the Madison Square Garden for him, and rang the bell 10 times and did the thing. It was quite emotional.
Yeah.
And Vince Jr. was in the rock and roll business with Cyndi Lauper, and he promoted rock and roll shows. He really wasn't that involved with his dad in wrestling. And when his dad passed away, Vince, how he got by with it, because back then you had, your territories. Everybody stayed in their own territory. They all had their own champion, their television, and Vince comes in and starts buying TV time in all the major TV markets, and that's kind of how that all, started. In fact, he came in to Minneapolis to meet with Vern Gagne and wanted to partner with Vern or buy him out. And of course, Vern refused. So Vince said, well, I gave you the chance. You went to a TV station here and bought TV time. And he did that all over the country. With my television background, if you will, I traveled a lot to start with Vince in Indianapolis, and we went up into Canada and into Winnipeg, Toronto, and he bought TV time and kind of took over, expanded the WWF and into the AWA territory, and that was that hurt Vern. When the history of WWF and how it became WWE.
Well, I know. Why don't you explain it to us? I know a little bit, but you probably know more than I would.
Well, the New York Athletic Commission wanted to tax wrestling as a sport. And at that time, the boxing commission, the boxing wasn't doing all that well, and they needed money, and so they wanted to tax Vince as a sport. And Vince, this is Vince Jr., says, hey, we're not a sport. We're entertainment. If they're going to tax us as entertainment and a sport, you're going to have to tax every entertainment group that comes into New York. And Vince went to court and actually won the case. And so he switched it over to WWE. I mean, he admitted that it was entertainment.
Yeah.
So that's how WWE started.
I'm sure a lot of promoters weren't happy with that when that came about.
Oh, well, back in the old, I don't like to, way back it was kayfabe and, but Vern would never, ever talk entertainment, or he didn't call it the wrestling business. He stuck pretty much to kayfabe, and it was an entirely different situation when I alluded to that earlier. The way Vince promoted, and he was a little more loose, if you will, and admitted and that it was entertainment. So
yeah, I remember that now that you said that, and there was a lot of discussion about it. I'll put it to you like that. So
yeah.
working now, did you just mainly work for the AWA and WWF? Is that the two you mainly worked for when you were in the wrestling business?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay, I said when you were in the did you mainly just work for the AWA and the WWF?
Yeah, I did go up into do some producing, directing a show for Mad Dog Vachon and Butcher. They had a little TV network, if you will, up in Canada, up in Montreal and Toronto, and it was pretty much broadcast in French. And I went up and produced and directed some shows for the Mad Dog. And then after the AWA, I worked with Wally in ladies professional wrestling.
Okay.
Started tried to start a ladies professional wrestling league, and we videotaped, did a lot of remote broadcasts, pay per view with lady wrestling, but it didn't. It fizzled out. It didn't go. But and then of course back in the 70s, we were in all the major markets that I mentioned.
Right.
And they were all pretty much on the weekends, Fridays, Saturdays, Sunday. Winnipeg, Denver were probably Thursday. But I got the idea that, a lot of the wrestlers lived here in Minneapolis. And, some of them in Chicago and Milwaukee, like the Crush.
Yeah.
And so I said to Vern, there's a lot of secondary markets, if you will, like Minot, North Dakota, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Sioux City, Iowa. They all get television. So, well, maybe we should promote some matches there. I said I'd be more than happy to do that and handle it. So I put together a promotion, Pro Wrestling Promotions, and I would bring. It was unreal. I had all the major talents on my cards.
Oh, wow.
I even had Hulk Hogan in some of my. He wrestled in some of the high school gyms in my promotion when he first came here. Nick Bockwinkel, Bobby Heenan, the Crusher, Mad Dog, they all, they're sitting around Monday through whatever and nothing going on, not making any money. So I put together that. I did that for about 7-8 years. It was very successful. I did as high as 75 and 80 towns a year.
Oh, goodness. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, like I was looking through my book here in 1973, I did, along with all the other major markets, I did 73 towns in 1979.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it worked out really well. What I would do is um, uh, book, say, like 3 towns in South Dakota, and we'd go and do the tour, do 3 towns in Wisconsin, Iowa, and kept the boys busy. And they made, they picked up some money, and so did I. It was very, very successful.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun. I know you were at the Crusher Fest in Milwaukee.
Yes.
I wanted to talk to you about that, but I'll tell you a story about Buck. Remember Buck Rock and Roll Zoomhawk?
I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah, with the big radio and rock and roll music.
Uh-huh.
We were promoting a town called New Ulm, Minnesota, and you can guess it was a German town, and we were the Crusher. All of his interviews, he would say, I do the polka and dance with all the dollies around the ring, and blah blah. So Buck would always come out on the spot shows, and with his radio and the rock and roll music. While we're in New Ulm, which they called the polka capital of the world, there was a lot of polka bands out of there. But we were in a gymnasium in New Ulm, and Buck was partner with the Crusher. So Buck comes out with his radio, his boombox, and instead of a rock and roll song in there, we put a polka. And he did polka music.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine the house came down, the Crush came in, how he was, hey, how about that? Walking around the ring, grabbing all the gals at ringside and doing the polka.
Yeah.
It was you talk about having fun to travel with the Crush, and I love traveling with Mad Dog Vachon.
Yeah.
And of course, my favorite was with Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
Every fall, Andre would come in from New York, and we'd do the Battle Royals. September, October. And Vern would have the Giant for about 2 months. And he was my responsibility to get him to all of the towns. Like, do his booking for, for his airlines. And if we were doing a town, 200-300 miles away or less, I would pick up Andre, and he'd ride with me. And it was fun.
Yeah.
He was such a great guy. Just what a gentleman. The old cliche, the gentle giant.
Yes.
He was. We were in Winnipeg, and it happened to be my birthday in November, and Andre found out that it was Al's birthday. He called everybody boss. Everybody was boss. But he found out it was my birthday, and so he made a deal after the matches with the manager of the hotel. We were staying at a hotel, had a pretty good sized swimming pool area, and he made a deal with the manager to open up the pool, and Andre had all the food catered in, and big Magnum bottles of champagne for Al's birthday. In fact, in my bar here at home, I have a empty big Magnum bottle of champagne signed to my pal Al Andre the Giant. I have
Wow.
that in my.
That's pretty
But
awesome.
yeah, it was amazing. You go through the airport with the guy, and boy, you
Yeah.
can imagine we go
Yeah.
out to eat, we go to a bar, and he would drink beer and Cavassier and
Yeah.
play cribbage, and the fans. He was good. We tried to keep the fans away from him as much as we could, but
Yeah.
Andre never refused to sign an autograph or say hello,
That's,
to the fans.
yeah.
He was very good that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was fortunate to travel, like what I said, the Mad Dog
Hmm.
and Larry the Accenting, Jesse and Adrian were a trip to travel with.
Hmm.
And Bobby would do interviews like we were going to be in a town in Wisconsin, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. It's about an hour and a half from Minneapolis.
Hmm.
And Bobby said, I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, Chippewa Falls is such a small town. Baskin and Robbins only has two flavors. And he said, underground, if if they have a parade, there's nobody left over to watch it. And all the time that he was doing the weasel thing,
Hmm.
that era when he was Bobby the Weasel
Hmm. Yeah.
in the weasel suit. The
Yeah.
Crushers run that started that out. We
Oh.
were,
Okay.
yeah, we were uh, doing tapes at the TV station, and I also directed 3 or 4 kids programs. I did the syndicated show Romper Room, and the opening of the show we had a Jack in the Box where you turn the handle and da 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 da, and pop goes the weasel, off the. So the Crusher used to come into the prop room for the kids shows and find a prop. He'd like to come out with a prop and do his interviews. So he's got
Yeah.
the Jack in the Box from Romper Room, and he's got a match coming up, and he's going to get after, the Bobby, and he was singing all around the ring. The Crusher chased the weasel, pop goes the weasel, and that's how that started. And so Wally Karbo's brother Eddie was a tailor, and they made the weasel suit and made
Wow.
Bobby wearing the weasel suit,
Wow. That's
and that's how all that started. And on the small town, Bobby was probably on every promo. Well, 90% of my promotions, Bobby was there either wrestling or with
yeah.
Vern or Ray the Crippler, another guy. I'm telling you what a funny guy. I had one time with Ray the Crippler Stevens. He was unreal. But
Yeah.
anyway, in the small towns, uh, Bobby would do an interview and say, when I come to Chippewa Falls, I don't want anybody calling me the weasel. Well, naturally, what they're going to do. So Bobby would get in the ring, and I would introduce him, and I would say, in his corner, da, 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 Bobby the wheat, and I catch myself. I'd say, Bobby the wheat, Bobby the brain Heenan. And he'd look at me, and do his thing. And I'd say, please don't call him the weasel. So when I'd say, don't, and the people, so then Bobby would turn his back to me to walk, into the corner ring or whatever, and I'd give the fans to come on, wave them, and they start hopping. Weasel. We had everything. And then he would jump out of the ring, and then the rules were you had to count to 10 to get back into the ring, or you're disqualified. And I would start counting, 10, 9, and the fans would start counting with me. And Bobby'd wait till about the count of 3, and he'd come running like heck and jumping into the ring. And he had the quickest mind. I'm telling you, in his interviews up in Winnipeg at the Battle Royal, $50,000 Battle Royal, Bobby, Nick Bockwinkel going to win the Battle Royal, and we're going to walk out with $50,000. And he said, for the lucky cabbie who takes us to the airport, a $5 tip. Yeah. Bobby, I saw him a couple of years ago up. They were doing a thing up in Duluth. They brought him in for autograph signing, and of course he passed away from cancer of the throat. Which, God, that was so sad. When you think about a guy like Bobby, who was without a doubt the sharpest, quickest mind, greatest manager ever, and he proved that, of course, when he went to New York, and to have that ending. But, he was in good spirits, still laughing, telling jokes, and so I had a lot of respect for him, doing that.
Yeah.
But, I sit here and think, I know I'm jumping back and forth here, but things pop into my mind.
Yeah.
It was fun, really fun traveling with the boys.
Yeah.
We had Vern owned a Navajo chieftain twin engine plane, and we would use it to fly all over the country. We had 3 pilots from Northwest Airlines that flew the plane for us, and 2 of the pilots were pilots in Vietnam. But what they would do is bid their days off, and then fly the boys like to Denver, Winnipeg, wherever. And it was part of my job to put the wrestlers who had to stay back in the town, like, say, Chicago, to do interviews. We would do every major town once every 3 weeks. And we'd have to cut interviews, promoting the upcoming match, do 3 weeks of interviews. And so we'd have to hold them over. The rest of the guys would go commercial.
Yeah.
And we hold over. The plane could hold 6 guys. They had to redo it. It was a 10-place, but with the weight and the whole deal, they redid Anyway, you probably heard the famous story of the Mad Dog opening the doors when we were up 10,000 feet coming home from Omaha, Nebraska.
I have heard it. Yeah, you were in there. I didn't know you were in there.
Oh, yeah. It was Greg Gagne tells the story, but he embellishes it a little bit. But it was dangerous because the type of Navajo plane that we had real heavy chains on the door. In case the door ever opened, it wouldn't break off and hit the tail, that'd be it. You know.
Yeah.
So this one, the dog opened the door. I wanted some fresh air. Threw his boots out, and we landed. And that was the end of that. The mad dog was never allowed on the plane again.
I wonder why.
Yeah, and one time, two, three times, we had put Andre the Giant in there. And then one time we had, honest to God, we had the two midgets, Andre the Giant, in the same plane. And Andre would sit there, and he was so big, he'd have to lay his head on his shoulder and drink his Cavassier and play cribbage. But it was fun.
Yeah.
Bobby Heenan, one time we were going, I don't know where, and we had a little Tokyo and Cowboy Bill, the two little midgets, and the one midget, little Tokyo, gets up and he's kind of looking in the cockpit, and Nick Bockwinkel always flew the right seat. You had to have somebody as a co-pilot, and Nick could fly, and so he would be the co-pilot. And the midget is looking up, and he sees the gas gauge, and it's empty. And what they would do is run all the fuel out of the one tank and then throw the switch to the other tank. So the midget is, the little Tokyo is like, he's going nuts. He's jumping up and down, and the pilot, Roy, and Nick, they see him, they know what it is, and so they wait until which is probably not a good idea to do. But the plane was chugging a little bit, and the pilot threw the switch, and it went from empty over to the full gauge, and the little Tokyo says, And when Bobby was in the plane with the midgets, he'd say, Al, book the midgets more. He said they can run up and down the aisle and bring me my beer.
That's funny.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. We flew that all over. But, for probably 5-6 years.
Wow.
Was that Navajo chief? They had a table in there. The boys could play cribbage or gin. Four of them could sit there, and we could put 2-3 people in the jump seat in the back. So and that's where the dog was sitting in the back there on the jump seat. That's when he opened the door. Anyway. But no, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of how many 20 some years of traveling all over, and a good experience working in New York with Vince. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, Vince was in the rock and roll business with Captain Lou Albano and Cyndi Lauper. I rode up with Vince to Kapinski, New York, I think it was. Anyway, he went up to pick up a lot of rock and roll speakers and mics and whatever equipment that he had there. And when Vinny took over from his dad, he was, just existing. He was doing all right. And I remember driving by a warehouse district with Vincent, and he said, "Al, I just rented that warehouse." And I said, "Oh yeah, why? Are you gonna do wrestling in there or what?" No, it's gonna be for my merchandise. And I said, "Oh, well," he started out with the big, foam rubber hand, and Vince made a ton of money, as did all the wrestlers in their merchandise.
Right.
Hulk Hogan with the lunch buckets and the T-shirts, and it was, and Jesse Ventura dolls, and everybody made a ton of money. I've got some dolls here with Jimmy Snuka and the Iron Sheik, Cosmo Masari. Remember Cosmo?
I do. Yes, Iron Sheik. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went through Vern's training camp. Vern had a training camp here in Minneapolis. He trained Greg Gagne, Jim Runzel, Ric Flair, Baron von Raschke. He trained, what's his name? Steamboat, Ricky Steamboat, Paul Orndorff. Oh God, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
The Mad Dog and Vern and Billy Robinson ran the training camp, and I'm telling you, it was to go through Vern's training camp and make it through. I mean, it was a grueling, punishing, all day, all night. I'm telling you, it was learning to, take the falls and do it in that ring. Vern would work them out, and all the push-ups and the running, and oh my God, it was unbelievable what they had to go.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then of course, little Buck Rock and Roll Zumhot, the first time he didn't make it through, and I'll be doggone. When the training camp opened again, he got a hold of Vern and insisted he wanted to come back, and they would beat him from pillar to post and put him through the grinder, and little Buck made it through.
Second time is charm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was very interesting. A lot of insight there, and I know the fans will appreciate it. There's a couple more things, and we're gonna let you go here. What are you?
No, I just again I apologize.
No, don't apologize.
My mind wanders, and things come in my mind, and I tried to share some stories that I thought the fans would. Sometimes I kind of ramble on, but
no, you're fine. In fact, some of those things I've never heard, so I appreciate the insight. I know when this comes out, they're going to appreciate it very much so. Very much so. So, what are you up to now?
I have one other thing here.
Okay.
I was going to share with you. Remember Chris Taylor?
Yes.
The Olympic wrestler. He made the front cover of Sports Illustrated when he was in the Olympics, and he was supplanted by the Russian Dietrich, the Russian wrestler, supplanted him and pinned him in the Olympics. We were promoting on Labor Day in Davenport, Iowa, at the ballpark there, and Chris was on the card, and we were in the locker room, and I was refereeing, and I'm sitting on the bench in the locker room with Chris Taylor, and all of a sudden he started getting dizzy, and Al, there's something wrong with me. Boom, and down he went. Fell right off the bench onto the floor. And he was out. And we called, of course, the paramedics came, and they, to try to take big Chris Taylor out of the ballpark through the tunnel and get him out of there on a stretcher was unreal. I went to the hospital with him, and the doctors, of course, emergency room, and then they wanted to give him some antibiotics and whatever. And, they said, what do you, how much do you give a giant like him? The guy was, 500 pounds or something.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
He had phlebitis. They think it was from an injury that a severe blow to his knee in one of the matches, but he eventually died of can't think of the name of the medical term now. But I stayed with him for 2 days in Davenport until his wife was able to come down there, and he was in the hospital for a couple, maybe two days, I think, and they got him out of there and brought him home to Iowa. We also went to his funeral down in Story City, Iowa. He was the all-time great wrestler in Iowa, and that's how he went to the Olympics. But Chris went through Vern's training camp also, and I traveled with Chris for a while. He was, real nice guy. I'll tell you one thing that I mean this sincerely. You travel with the boys. I've traveled with everyone you can think of for years, and they each have their own, I don't want to say ego, but, they all had their, like, Ray the Crippler Stevens, different than, say, Mad Dog Rashad, or the difference than Jumpin' Jimmy Brunzel. They all had their personality, and they all had their their ring persona and whatever. But it was fun, and I can't think of maybe one or two wrestlers in all the years that I traveled with and promoted that that I didn't get along with and have fun. And there were a couple of them that I would not want to be around at all. But we won't go into any names. But basically, everyone I worked with was just great. And then I'm looking here too. With Ed Asner, we did the movie The Wrestler.
Yeah.
I worked on that with Vern. And that was fun with the Crusher and the Bruiser, and then we had who was the Japanese wrestler? What was the Japanese wrestler that teamed with Ken Patera?
Master Saito?
Saito.
Yeah.
Right. And that was another deal, about the deal that happened in Wisconsin where they ended up going to prison. Vern, or Wally and I and Nick Bockwinkel went to their trial, and there was a fan that threw the rock through the window at McDonald's. They didn't. You know the story about that?
Yeah, I've heard it. They went up. You could tell it though. Go ahead. I mean, go ahead.
Well, the boys, nobody ever ate prior to the match. I
Right.
mean, they have to wait until after the matches were over, and then they would, go and get something to eat. So, right, just right by the arena where we were wrestling, I think it was Kenosha, Wisconsin, Saito and Patera went down to McDonald's. They wanted to get something to eat. It was like almost midnight, and they said, "I'm sorry, we're closed." And they were inside, and they noticed some cheeseburgers and stuff on a tray, and they wanted to buy them, and they said no, they couldn't. That they're outdated or whatever. We can't sell them. So they reluctantly left, and there were a bunch of fans outside, and of course they had just wrestled, and a lot of the fans were there, and Patera, and they won their tag team that night. And anyway, the fans started harassing them and hollering at them, and one thing, another, and threw a rock through the window. And Saito and Patera went back to their hotel, and comes a knock on the door, and Patera is on the phone. So Saito goes out and to the hallway to see who it is, and he spoke a little English, but not not a lot of English, and they're going to arrest him and this and that. And Kenny hears the disturbance and hangs up the phone and goes out in the hall, and Kenny as much as told him, go whatever. We didn't, that's bullshit. We never did that, blah, blah, blah. And they went back in the room, and about 15, 20 minutes later, knock on the door, and they open the door, and there's 3 or 4 cops there, and they come in and start going to arrest them, put them in handcuffs, and haul them away. And Patera and Saito started to defend themselves, and there were a few police cops flying around the room. I'll tell you, it was something. And anyway, they were arrested, and then they had to go to a trial, and we went down to Milwaukee for the trial. And the judge must have been a wrestling fan that didn't like the heels, and no, I mean it was a kangaroo court. I mean, they were guilty no matter what, and they ended up in prison for, I think, 3 years.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now they get probation these days.
Oh yeah. Saito got out of prison and went back to Japan and never came back.
I don't blame him.
When Jesse Ventura became governor, Jesse was invited to go over to Japan. Saito set up a deal, and they brought Jesse and his wife and family over to Japan, as for the visit from the Minnesota governor. So that was another hoo-ha with Jesse running for governor.
Yeah. Yeah. Al, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Al. You're going.
He was. Jesse was a really intelligent guy. I mean, he was no dummy. I mean,
Yeah.
he knew. I mean, he was really. When he called me up one day and said, "Al, I'm going to run for governor," and I said, "What?" Yeah, he was the mayor of Brooklyn Center here in the suburb. He was the mayor for a couple of years. Anyway, he was out at the Minnesota State Fair, and there's Jesse on the corner with his Navy SEAL jacket on and shaking hands and talking to the fans, and he was running against Skip Humphrey, Hubert Humphrey's son.
Yeah.
And they said, they noticed Jesse starting to get pretty popular, and they said, they're going to have another debate. So they said, we'll invite the big dumb wrestler on the debate, and we'll really put him down, and that'll be the end of him. Well, Jesse did the opposite. He made Skip Humphrey look like a jabroni. And anyway, and Jesse, rented a bus and toured all wrestling towns in Minnesota that he wrestled in.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse was one of those guys that, you hated them, but deep down you liked them. And the rural vote came in, and I'll be doggone if he didn't win.
Yeah.
And he was a fantastic governor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, Al, I want to tell you thank you. I mean, there's a lot of insight. That was wonderful. I just wanted, what are you doing now, sir? You got any projects going on, or?
All right. What I'm doing now, I'm senior vice president for trade association for the carnival industry.
Okay.
I've been with them now 31 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I went to work in 1989. The OABA, Outdoor Amusement Business Association, was celebrating their 25th anniversary, and their president wanted to produce a 25th anniversary video, and he knew of my background in television and asked me to produce a tape, which we did at the Minnesota State Fair. And that was the end of my wrestling in 1990, excuse me. And he, Raleigh, the guy's name, said, "Al, are you doing anything now?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really." Well, he said, "I could use you, blah, blah, blah. We've got a convention coming up in Florida, and you could help in the booth and blah, blah, blah." So I started with them in 1990.
Okay.
And I normally do 25, 30 fairs a year all across the United States and Canada. My main job was to do fundraising for scholarships for kids in the carnival and fair industry.
Wow.
And I've been doing that for 26 years of the 32 years. And I did well over 450, we call them jamborees, and I traveled to all 450 and did the live auctioneering and auctioned off and raised money for a scholarship. So
Wow.
I've done that. I'm still with them. When the COVID hit, of course, it closed down all the carnivals and fairs and celebrations. So I was furloughed for a while. We're starting back up again and got some conventions coming up. So I hope to be able to get back on track. I'll be 86 years old now in November.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're still going though. Hey, you're still going.
yeah. So, and my bride, we've been married 66 years.
Oh, congratulations.
So yeah, she's put up with me with the carnival industry and wrestling and TV.
Wonderful.
Anyway,
Wonderful.
yeah. Well, Brian, I appreciate it. I hope.
Oh, my pleasure.
I didn't babble on too long.
No. I want to thank you, sir, for your time today and your insight on all this. I mean, it's been wonderful, and I really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Al DeRusha. Al, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
thank you, Brian.
You bet.
If you ever wanted any other questions or whatever, I wouldn't mind going back on with you.
I appreciate that, sir. I appreciate that. And folks, if you're listening, please subscribe. And we also have a YouTube channel and a TeeSpring store, so look us up and enjoy the podcast. Thank you.